Welcome to our deep dive,
Okay.
into a true crime mystery that has haunted a small town just north of Chicago for almost a century.
Wow.
The unsolved case of Alfreda Kak.
Hmm.
We're going to be exploring a podcast episode about this chilling 1928 case,
Okay.
unraveling a story that's full of twists and turns
Yeah.
and unanswered questions.
Oh, I like it already.
So imagine, a prominent family, a web of relationships,
Hmm.
and a chilling discovery in the basement of the Lake Bluff police station.
Okay.
That's where our journey begins.
I'm ready.
So,
When you say 1928,
Yeah.
what makes this case particularly fascinating is the historical context. Right?
yeah,
We're looking back at an era when forensic science was in its infancy.
right.
I mean, think about it. No DNA testing,
Oh, yeah.
limited fingerprinting technology,
Right.
and a very different understanding of mental health,
Right.
the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
Yeah, it really sets the stage for a mystery that seems almost impossible to solve.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's rewind to a chilly Tuesday morning in October 1928.
Okay.
The police chief, Barney Rosenhagen,
Mm-hmm.
and the town handyman, Chris Lewis.
Okay.
They walk into the station.
Yeah.
And right away, they sense something is off.
What is it?
The place is freezing cold,
Uh-huh.
even though the furnace should have been running all night.
That's weird.
Right.
Yeah.
So this seemingly minor detail, this cold,
Yeah.
it actually becomes a crucial element in the narrative.
Oh, how so?
It speaks to a disruption,
Uh-huh.
a break in the normal routine.
Yeah.
And when Chris goes down to the basement to investigate,
Yeah.
he stumbles upon a scene that will forever be etched in the annals of Lake Bluff history.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
He finds Alfreda Kak,
Yeah.
a successful encyclopedia salesperson,
Ooh,
standing
cute.
naked
Oh, wow.
and severely burned in front of the furnace.
What?
I was just struck by the descriptions of her injuries.
Yeah.
Charred skin, exposed bone,
Wow.
even fingers and toes missing. It's hard to fathom the level of pain she must have been enduring.
Yeah, you don't even want to think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So the sheer brutality of her injuries,
Yeah.
immediately raises questions.
Of course.
Was this an accident?
Yeah.
Was it self-inflicted? Or something far more sinister?
Right.
And this is where the details of the scene become incredibly important.
Okay. What do we have?
So her belongings were neatly piled nearby, untouched by flames.
Okay.
And there were bloody footprints leading back and forth between the furnace and the door. So it paints this picture of desperation,
Right.
but also of a calculated act.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And then there's the locked door.
Oh, interesting.
The key is nowhere to be found.
So it's like a locked room mystery.
Exactly.
How did she even get in there?
That's the question.
Yeah.
So that locked door immediately introduces the possibility of another person being involved.
Right.
Someone who might have locked her in that basement. It shifts the focus from a tragic accident or self-inflicted harm to something potentially much darker.
Yeah. Okay.
So who was Alfreda Kak?
Fill me in.
We know she was from a prominent family in a neighboring town,
Good.
well respected in the community.
Mhm.
She had a train ticket for her journey home after a meeting in Chicago,
Okay.
but somehow ended up in that police station basement.
So what drew her there?
Yeah, and this is where the timeline gets a bit murky.
Okay.
And you have to consider the limitations of the investigation at the time.
Right.
No cell phone records,
Okay.
no security cameras,
Hmm.
just witness testimonies and a few scattered pieces of evidence.
That makes it hard.
Right.
Yeah.
We know she made 2 phone calls from the train station before heading to Lake Bluff.
Okay.
One to the police station, which went unanswered,
Huh.
and another to an unknown person.
Oh, interesting.
These unanswered calls really make you wonder,
Who was she trying to reach?
Yeah. Exactly. And what was so urgent that she decided to take a side trip to Lake Bluff late at night.
That doesn't add up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Yeah.
Those unanswered calls represent a gap in our understanding,
Mhm.
a void that fuels speculation and opens the door to a multitude of theories.
Absolutely.
And then there's the fact that she disappeared from the radar for hours,
Right.
resurfacing only when she's found in the basement the next morning.
So what happened during that time? Who might she have encountered?
Exactly.
I mean, these are questions that continue to haunt this case.
They do.
Yeah.
And as we delve deeper into the investigation, one name keeps emerging.
Okay, who is it?
Charles Hitchcock,
Hitchcock.
the night watchman at the police station.
Oh, okay.
Alfreda herself mentioned his name while she was in the hospital,
Really?
asking, "Hitch, why don't you come to me?"
Wow.
It suggests a connection,
Right.
a bond that goes beyond casual acquaintance.
Yeah, that's interesting,
It certainly adds to the intrigue.
for sure.
So Hitchcock claimed they were just friends,
Okay.
that he had been her public speaking teacher a few years back.
Uh-huh.
But his alibi for that night, a broken ankle corroborated by his wife,
Mm-hmm.
seems almost too convenient, don't you think?
Alibis can be tricky things, especially in a case like this where evidence is scarce and memories are prone to fading.
Right.
There's a 2-hour window where Hitchcock's whereabouts are unaccounted for.
Right.
Could he have, despite his injury,
Yeah.
slipped out to meet Alfreda?
And why would she even go to the police station in the first place
Yeah.
if it wasn't to see him?
Exactly.
It definitely raises more questions than it answers.
Absolutely.
But before we get too caught up in Hitchcock's story,
Okay.
there's another layer to unravel.
Okay, let's hear it.
Alfreda's confession.
What did she say?
While still in the hospital, she claimed that she had burned herself to
Oh.
purify her soul
Oh, my God.
and prove her love for Charles Hitchcock.
This confession, rather than clarifying the situation, introduces a whole new set of complexities.
Right.
It suggests a level of emotional intensity,
Yeah.
perhaps even a distorted perception of reality
Right.
that's difficult to comprehend.
I mean, I understand the concept of spiritual love,
Yeah.
but burning oneself as a testament to that love,
Yeah.
it seems almost impossible to believe.
Right.
And wouldn't the pain be unbearable?
I mean, that's the question that haunts this case.
Yeah.
Could someone willingly endure that level of suffering for any reason?
Right.
Doctors who treated Alfreda expressed serious doubts,
Yeah.
suggesting that the burns were too severe, too extensive to be self-inflicted.
So if she didn't burn herself,
Right.
then who did?
Yeah.
And why?
Exactly.
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
So we left off with Alfreda's confession.
Right.
Her claim that she burned herself as a testament to her love for Charles Hitchcock.
Yeah.
It's a difficult concept to grasp, The idea of someone inflicting such pain on themselves willingly.
You're right to question that, it's a crucial point that investigators grappled with back then,
Right.
and that continues to fuel speculation today. And to complicate matters even further, Alfreda's story changed.
Oh, really?
She mentioned a man named Frank
Frank.
and claimed he had thrown her down.
Yeah.
So now we have a potential new suspect adding another layer to this already intricate puzzle.
Wow. So it makes you wonder if those initial claims about self-inflicted burns
Yeah.
were a way to protect someone,
Right.
or perhaps a desperate attempt to make sense of a horrifying situation.
That's a possibility worth considering. Trauma can have a profound impact on memory and perception, especially in an era when mental health was less understood. And remember, we're dealing with a limited understanding of forensic science at the time. Imagine trying to piece together this puzzle without the tools we have today.
Right.
No DNA analysis,
Right.
no advanced fingerprinting techniques.
It's amazing they found anything.
It's a testament to those investigators that they were able to uncover as much as they did.
It really makes you appreciate the advancements in forensic science, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But even without those tools, there were some fascinating pieces of evidence that emerged, like Alfreda's diaries,
No, the diary.
which offered a glimpse into her inner world. They detailed her feelings for Hitchcock, her admiration for him, and her belief in their spiritual connection.
Those diaries are a gold mine for anyone trying to understand the dynamics of this case. They reveal a woman wrestling with complex emotions, love, admiration, perhaps even a sense of guilt or conflict. And they provide a more nuanced picture of her relationship with Hitchcock than his initial claims of a simple friendship.
Right, and one entry even mentions a pros and cons list about whether to continue the relationship,
Oh, wow.
acknowledging that Hitchcock loves her but also wants to remain faithful to his wife.
Talk about a tangled web of emotion.
It's a classic love triangle scenario,
It is.
but with a dark and tragic twist. And it speaks to the potential for manipulation and the complexities of human relationships, especially when one person holds a position of authority or influence.
Right.
And speaking of authority, remember the night watchman Charles Hitchcock?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that after his wife divorced him, he ended up marrying Alfreda's best friend, Marie Mueller.
Marie Mueller.
You're kidding. Talk about a plot twist.
So the fact that Hitchcock later married Marie adds a whole new dimension to this story. It raises questions about Marie's potential involvement, her knowledge of the events leading up to Alfreda's death, and whether she might have had her own motives.
It certainly casts a shadow of suspicion over her, especially when you consider that Hitchcock's niece later claimed
Oh, that's juicy.
that Marie confessed to knowing what happened,
Wow.
but vowed to take that secret to her grave
Right.
out of love for her husband.
It's like something out of a Gothic novel.
Those claims, while difficult to verify,
That
add another layer of intrigue to this already convoluted narrative. Was Marie a witness to something sinister? Does she play a more active role in Alfreda's fate? Or was she simply trying to protect the man she loved, even if it meant burying the truth?
It's a chilling thought,
It is.
and it makes you wonder about the weight of those unspoken truths, the secrets that people carry with them throughout their lives.
Absolutely. But let's not get too sidetracked by the love triangle and the claims of spiritual love. We also need to consider another intriguing piece of evidence, the anonymous Bub letter.
Ah, yes, the bublet. This is where the case takes a turn toward the occult, introducing elements of hypnotism and ritualistic purification. The author, who claimed to be a friend of Alfreda's and a practitioner of occultism, described an attempted hypnotic ritual gone wrong. They were supposedly helping Alfreda burn herself as a means of purging her feelings for Hitchcock.
It sounds almost too bizarre to be true, like something out of a horror movie.
It does.
But it does offer a potential explanation for how someone might have endured those horrific burns. If Alfreda was under the influence of hypnosis, perhaps she was able to withstand a level of pain that would otherwise be unimaginable.
That's the power of suggestion.
Right.
The ability to alter someone's perception of reality and influence their actions. And remember, in the 1920s, hypnotism was viewed with a mixture of fascination and fear. It was a time when the boundaries between science and the supernatural were blurred, and the potential for manipulation through hypnotic suggestion was not fully understood.
It's both fascinating and unsettling, the idea that someone could be manipulated to do such a horrific act.
Absolutely.
But how much weight should we really give to this Bub letter?
Right.
Was it a genuine confession?
Yeah.
A cruel hoax? Or something else entirely?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The letter's authenticity has never been definitively proven, and its author remains a shadowy figure. There's true motives shrouded in mystery. It's a tantalizing clue, but one that ultimately leads to more questions than answers.
And it's not the only clue that raises more questions than answers. Let's not forget about Frank, the man Alfreda mentioned in her later confession.
Oh yeah, Frank.
They investigated a Frank Mandy, a violin teacher who shared a studio with Hitchcock. But that lead seemed to fizzle out. Was he a real person?
Right.
A figment of Alfreda's imagination?
Uh-huh.
Or someone who managed to slip through the cracks of the investigation?
It's another loose thread in a tapestry woven with mystery and unanswered questions. And it highlights the limitations of any investigation. Even with the best intentions and the most dedicated efforts, some truths may remain elusive.
So we're left with a tangled web of relationships, conflicting confessions, and a chilling question. Did Alfreda Kak tragically take her own life, or was she the victim of something far more sinister? Let's continue our exploration in the final part of our deep dive. So we've explored this maze of evidence, suspects, and shifting narratives in the Alfreda Kak case.
We have.
And, it makes you wonder
Yeah.
how differently this investigation might have unfolded with today's technology.
Oh, absolutely. The advancements in forensic science since 1928 are staggering. Imagine being able to analyze those bloody footprints for DNA,
Right.
trace those mysterious phone calls,
Yeah.
or even reconstruct a digital timeline of Alfreda's movements.
Yeah.
We might have had concrete answers instead of these lingering questions.
It's almost like watching a historical drama
Yeah.
and wanting to shout, just run a DNA test.
Right, exactly.
But even without those modern tools, the investigators back then were determined to get to the bottom of this case.
Now, they were dedicated.
They held a coroner's inquest,
Right.
which is basically a legal proceeding to determine the cause of death.
Uh-huh.
Numerous witnesses were called,
Yeah.
including family, friends, and even Charles Hitchcock himself.
Wow. So the inquest, despite its limitations, provides valuable insights into the prevailing attitudes and beliefs at the time.
Right.
Remember, this was an era when mental health was not fully understood,
Right.
and the influence of suggestion or manipulation was not as widely recognized as it is today.
It makes you wonder if those factors might have influenced the final ruling,
Possibly.
suicide by self-inflicted burns.
It's certainly possible. The inquest might have lacked the framework to consider alternative explanations, especially given the bizarre circumstances surrounding Alfreda's death.
But even with that ruling, the investigators weren't convinced.
Really?
They believed someone was responsible, even if it wasn't a clear-cut case of murder. They even offered a $1,000 reward for information.
Wow.
hoping to unearth new leads.
So it speaks to their commitment, their refusal to accept the simplest explanation in the face of so many unanswered questions.
It does.
Yeah.
But despite their efforts, no smoking guns emerged.
Right.
However, there is a fascinating parallel that connects this historical case to a much more recent one.
Okay, what's that?
A case that captivated the nation just a few years ago,
Huh?
the Michelle Carter case.
Ah, yes. The Michelle Carter case, a tragic story of a young woman who took her own life, seemingly encouraged by her boyfriend through text messages and phone calls. It sparked a national conversation about the power of digital communication and the potential for coercion and manipulation in the online world.
It's chilling to think that someone could be influenced to take their own life through words alone.
It is.
And while Alfreda's case predates the digital age, it raises similar questions about the power of suggestion
Right.
and the potential for someone to exert a dangerous level of control over another person.
Both cases, despite their differences in time and technology, highlight the complexities of human relationships and the dark side of influence. They force us to confront the uncomfortable reality that sometimes the lines between free will and manipulation can become blurred, especially in situations involving emotional vulnerability or psychological dependence.
It makes you wonder if Alfreda, in her state of emotional turmoil and perhaps influenced by figures like Hitchcock or the author of the Bub letter, might have been vulnerable to suggestion, to a distorted perception of reality that ultimately led to her tragic end.
That's a question that will likely never be definitively answered. But it underscores the importance of understanding the psychology of influence, the subtle ways in which words, actions, and even unspoken expectations can shape our thoughts and behaviors.
So after all the twists and turns, the
Yeah.
conflicting confessions and the tantalizing clues, we're left with a profound sense of mystery.
We are.
What truly happened to Alfreda Kak in that police station basement?
Right?
Did she tragically take her own life?
Yeah.
Or was she a victim of something far more sinister, a web of manipulation and hidden motives that we may never fully unravel?
It's a question that continues to fascinate and haunt us nearly a century later. And perhaps that's the enduring power of this case. The unresolved questions, the lingering doubts, the possibility that some truths may remain forever elusive.
It reminds us that even in a world saturated with information,
Yeah.
some mysteries endure,
You do?
challenging us to consider the limits of our understanding and to grapple with the enduring power of the unknown.
The Alfreda Kak case is a stark reminder that even in the absence of definitive answers, the pursuit of truth, the examination of evidence, and the exploration of multiple perspectives can be both enlightening and profoundly humbling.
We may never know for certain what happened to Alfreda Kak, but perhaps that's okay. Maybe the real value lies not in finding a definitive solution, but in the journey itself, in the process of exploring the possibilities, piecing together the fragments of a life, and acknowledging that sometimes the most captivating stories are those that leave us pondering the mysteries of the human heart.
Indeed. And perhaps in the end, that's the most profound takeaway from this deep dive. The recognition that some stories, like the life and death of Alfreda Kak, may never fully close, but will continue to echo through time, whispering their secrets and challenging us to grapple with the enduring complexities of the human experience.